Coming at you on Sports Talk Philadelphia today, we will talk about the recent successful series the Sixers just had against the Brooklyn Nets and the horrendous road trip the Phillies just returned from. All that and much more on Sports Talk Philadelphia.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I am your host Sam Brown, filling in for the wonderful Josh Abrams, who I have on desk with me. And before we get into our Sixers and Phillies talk, we're going to talk about some headlines of the recent weeks. Tonight we have the NFL Draft in Nashville, Tennessee. The Eagles pick at 25. The most urgent need that it's been talked about that they need to address with this draft is running back, and there's a great running backs prospect in the University of Alabama in Josh Jacobs. So I'm going to turn it over to the panel here. What do we think? What do we expect tonight?
Well, I mean, I think the Eagles are really going to probably go towards offensive line now because, as we most recently heard today, they're re-signing Tim Jernigan to a one-year deal, and that's going to pad up their defensive line. A defensive line of him, Malik Jackson, and Fletcher Cox is pretty scary, I would say, up front. And then you mentioned running back. They got Jordan Howard, so I would like to think that running back isn't as big of a need. But I would also like to think that we would want some kind of backup for Jordan Howard. God forbid he were to go down or anything.
I agree with you about potentially taking an offensive lineman. I think the Eagles in recent years have a history of taking a lineman in the first round, and sometimes it doesn't really work out for them, sometimes it does. But I think that it's going to be interesting to see what Howie's going to do, because I could also see them taking a wide receiver if they need a deep threat too.
Yeah, the name that I've been seeing so far in mock drafts is Clelin Ferrell, defensive end out of Clemson. So I would not be upset about that per se. I mean, there's not really much of a need. It's a very defensive first round in this draft, but I could also see them trading back and just like taking pieces like that. I don't think this is a very crucial draft for them this year, just because they did get Jordan Howard, and that was their biggest need this year. Yeah,
they seem to have an array of options as far as what they can do in this draft. But our next headline is that the Flyers has signed a new coach in Alain Vigneault. He had gone to 2 Stanley Cups previously, once with the Rangers and once with the Vancouver Canucks. So he's got quite a resume in the NHL. What do we think of this hire?
Definitely not quite, maybe not on the same pedestal as Joe Quenneville, but we know how much of a winner he is. But this guy, obviously, as you said, has been to 2 Stanley Cup finals. He obviously knows what he's getting himself into. I'd like to think that with the kind of team that we have, with all the veterans and all the young guys that we have, I think he should be able to round this team up into a playoff contending team. What he's going to do differently from Scott Gordon and Dave Hackstall in the past, I don't know exactly, but I would like to think that with his resume, he should be able to take this team higher.
Yeah, he definitely has that experience leading teams deep into the playoffs. So I think that could be good for the Flyers, as they are kind of in this weird transitional period where they do have a lot of veterans, but they also have a lot of young guys coming in. So I think he can kind of provide the medium balance that they need right now.
Yeah, and you see it's always tough to win with an interim head coach, somebody who was just thrown in halfway through the year. So definitely good to have a stable force, somebody with playoff experience, like you said, and definitely has a great young core around him now, with Carter Hart and others around him. So it just will be interesting to see what they do this offseason.
Yeah, and as Selena mentioned, they are in still kind of a transition period, but it's really felt that way for the past 5, 6, maybe even past 7 seasons. So maybe hiring a coach with this resume in the NHL who's he's been deep in the playoffs, he's had success, maybe this can really mark the end of that transition period that we've been just begging for to come to a finish. Yeah. But go ahead, Josh.
I just wanted to add in, I think the fact that, Claude Giroux at this point, and I guess Van Riemsdyk, since we brought him back, are the only 2 guys that are from that Stanley Cup appearance team in 2010. I think they should be able to resonate well together just because of the mutual experience of getting that far, at least.
All right, well, that just wraps up headlines. Right now, we're going to jump into Phillies talk. The Phillies are just coming off a horrendous road trip. They lose 3 of 4 in Colorado, and they just lose 2 of 3 against the Mets in New York, when finally winning in a shutout last night. It was really just a tough road trip to watch. Bryce Harper getting ejected in that game in New York. He was the first Phillies player to be ejected from a game since 2015. So I'm just going to open this up for you guys. What has been exposed in this team over this rough road trip?
I definitely would say the bullpen struggles are an issue. Not just even in the bullpen, the rotation struggles are a real issue. For the most part, they're putting runs up and they're getting the run support that they need. The offense isn't like fantastic, maybe, but they're not bad. But it's really like Aaron Nola has been struggling so much, and just is there a closer? We don't really know. There's no one consistently there. So I think the pitching is really their main issue right now.
I wouldn't say anything was revealed per se. I would say it's more of something that we saw expected. We knew coming into this that our offense was going to be electric, and it has been so far. We still have 4 players right now with an over 1,000 OPS. But we knew that the pitching would be a struggle, and we knew that we need to get another piece to go with Aaron Nola. And although he struggled, it's only been 5 starts. He only has 1 quality start, but we know he'll correct the ship. But it's key to either see the other 4 that we have in-house, because if you saw yesterday, Vince Velasquez really threw a great 5-inning game. So if you just look at that, you just need to go either deeper into pitching. I know that, for example, there's Gio Gonzalez out there now. David Keuchel is still without anyone, was not on a team yet. So just looking in that direction, I just know pitching is a problem.
You know, you guys bring up the pitching, and that has been absolutely horrendous from time to time. But there were multiple games during this rough stretch that you brought up, Sam, where the offense would go, 1 for 13, 2 for 15 on the night with runners in scoring position. I believe one of the games in Colorado, we had the bases loaded 3 different times and didn't produce a single run or a single hit out of it. So, I mean, as much as we want to blame the pitching and how consistently bad they've been, that's fine. I mean, that's completely understandable. But I'd also like to call out the offense a little bit, because while we're not going to expect them to be perfect, but we also need them to kind of capitalize when they need to the most, and they didn't do that in some of these games, and that's why we have already reached double-digit losses.
Yeah, as far as offense goes, it's perfectly expected that there will be slumps throughout the year, but I just think it might be a little bit concerning that it's happening so early in the season for an offense that's supposed to be just electric. And when it's electric, it's really electric. But when it's slowed down like it did, you saw, like you just mentioned, they didn't produce any hits with runners in scoring positions. So you just have.
Just kind of disagree. I wouldn't go 100% against this offense right now. If you look at it, the Mets, in my opinion, have the best rotation in all of baseball right now. And they had another 3-game stretch early because they're only 20 games into it. So you really got to see the offense mesh together and work in this lineup, especially with a couple injuries. Like losing Kingery and Segura, I think it's huge, because that's 2 of our best hitters.
And that's kind of like a big part of why we're
struggling
right now. We have 7 guys on the DL right now, and these are just the most significant of the 3.
Yeah.
Scott Kingery specifically is my big issue right now, because he was raking the ball prior to his hamstring, and for whatever reason, it's becoming a common theme now where our players are starting to strain their hamstring. Now, luckily for Segura, who has the best average on the team so far, it's only a mild hamstring strain, so he should be back by this weekend. But the other guys, we don't know, and that's kind of a concern, especially. I know it's early; it's only 10 day. It's only going on the 10-day IL, but I mean, that's a big reason why we're losing games. I'd say.
Yeah, you do have to be careful with Segura too, who does have an injury history from his previous years in the majors, but Bryce Harper has also put up quite a streak of his own. He's been on base in each of the first 22 games since the season started. How has that helped out the team? What has that brought for the team so far this year?
I think having Bryce on base, first of all, having Bryce in the lineup scares pitchers on opposing teams. It scares them, and they pitch around him. And so when they give him something good to hit, a lot of the time he'll hit that ball right out of there, and the crowd will go crazy. But other times he'll get walked, and that just sets up Rhys Hoskins. And Rhys Hoskins has been dangerous this season. I mean, yesterday we saw 2 home runs for him, and that's what won them the game. So I think it might be a little frustrating for Bryce at times because they do pitch around him, but it sets up Rhys to have an incredible season as well.
First game of the season when they put him on intentionally, and you saw how that worked out for the Braves. That grand slam right there.
And you can't necessarily try and pitch around him so much to be giving him walks. He has a 400 OBP right now, and it's just going to benefit the entire team. That's why Franco's had such a great season. If you look at the entire lineup, you think that it's a break in the bottom when it really isn't. But as you said, Harper's worth his weight in gold right now just on those walks, and it just makes the entire team more deadly.
How about Maikel Franco, man? I mean, we've been talking about coming into the season how like him and Odubel and maybe even Cesar were on their last straw with this team. And Franco, I'd say, is the one guy out of that original group that's actually proving himself and finally, telling us that like he actually still wants to be here.
And even quietly, Hernandez leads the team in hits right now.
Yeah.
So just the fact of that he's showing the consistency and Franco has shown the power in the bottom of the order.
I actually I got to interview Maikel Franco for the Collegian History newspaper a couple years ago, and we talked about his inconsistent hitting and just kind of seeing that transformation from 2 years ago to now, like when he's in the 8th spot of all places. Just I think having that consistent position in the lineup as well, though, is really helping him. I think Gabe Kapler keeping the lineup generally the same, only swapping people out here and there. Rather than like last season switching it every other night is really helping them as well, especially Franco.
Yeah, and look, going back to that Bryce Harper on base streak, it really does act like a catalyst for the rest of this offense to get going because, like you mentioned, a lot of people were counting Franco and Hernandez out to not play as well as they've been playing, and you see how that's going right now. But we're going to move to the other side of the ball now. Aaron Nola, the person who's supposed to be the ace of this team, is pitching to a 6.84 ERA right now. And I'm not sure the numbers on him, but his first inning struggles have really set the tone for how he pitches throughout the rest of the game because he hasn't really been coming back from these first inning deficits that he's been digging himself into. So what do we make of that?
You really don't need stats to like talk about his first inning struggles. There's just, I think every start he's had, he's given up at least an earned run in the first inning, and sometimes it comes in clusters too, and that really hurts him. He may only have 1 loss on the year, but he has a near 7 ERA. That has to go down at some point in time during the season if we want to make the playoffs. We're talking about winning the division. That's our ace. Like, I know it's going to change at some point, but right now, like, it's bad.
And you can see it just even without the stats, just in the confidence of his pitches. He really is lacking confidence right now with I think his curveball percentage is down 10%. I think that he has just been struggling, leaving everything over the heart of the plate, and you could just see it throughout his facial features, like after a pitch, for example.
And it's worrisome because we've talked time and time again in the past about his injury struggles. So it makes you almost wonder, is there something going on other than him just maybe struggling mentally? Could be something more physical than that, but we don't know for sure. And it's frustrating because you expect him, like you said, to be our ace. He's our #1 guy, but we're not getting much out of him right now.
Yeah, and that's really an issue when there's no real solid rock behind him to solidify the rest of that bullpen. We just saw Nick Pivetta got optioned to AAA, and that's a very well-deserved status for him. But that just about wraps up Phillies talk right now. When we come back from commercial, we'll have some Sixers talk for you. Stay tuned. Unfortunately I did, and it was just so heartbreaking to see the first 8 batters strike out.
Claude Giroux hasn't done anything for this organization.
I'm confused. You're doing an internship in sort of marketing and production, right?
I really can't believe that Ben Simmons won't be dropping 3s on the court this year.
Hey, Tanya, I know you're really busy, but could you tell me who the Sixers play on October 28th?
Doctor, in order for the Eagles to win this week, they're going to need 250 passing yards from Carson Wentz. We're going to need 100 yards rushing. I don't care who it is. We're going to need a lot of good production from our tight end and wide receivers. And I'm going to need 5 interceptions from Malcolm Jenkins. Yeah, Mom, look, I know the money situation isn't good right now, but I promise you Travis Konechny's going to have a breakout year.
Hey, I had to climb to the top of Mount Everest to find Nick Pavetta's ERA.
Sports Talk Philadelphia. We talk nothing but sports all the time.
Is learning how to code or make video games and websites.
Not only can you post videos online, you can make your own.
It's learning about leadership.
Together we are Tech Girls.
Hello and welcome back to this week's edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia. We just finished up with Phillies Talk, so now we're going to jump into the Sixers. They are just coming off a series in which they've won 4-1 against the Brooklyn Nets. They came back after losing the first game in pretty horrendous fashion. I know I've been using that word a lot, but that's really the best word I have to describe it, given the lead that they had and they blew it, and they just never came back from that. But I'm going to open this up to you guys because you guys are the Sixers experts here. What went well in that series that led to their win?
Well, first of all, they didn't shoot 3 for 20, whatever the stat was in games 2 through 5. That happened in game 1, and that was essentially the reason why we lost that game. And then, with and without Joel Embiid, we were able to just overpower the Nets. You look at this Brooklyn Nets team; they had really two good guards, I would say, in D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, who came off the bench. Other than that, they didn't really have any scoring threats, especially big guys that could handle Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, JJ, Tobias, and Jimmy Butler. So I think in the end, this Sixers team was way better than the Nets. It's just that we didn't play to our potential in the first game, and that's what kind of scared people.
I think they didn't even play to their potential in the first 3 games, I would say, even 4 games. And even though despite winning, it was a struggle. It was a battle, except for the last game of the series, which sealed the deal, and that was more of a blowout. They struggled in this series, and the lead was back and forth a lot of the times. And I think part of that might have been coming in cocky because they were playing Brooklyn, and everyone was like, oh, Brooklyn probably shouldn't have made the playoffs, but I think they kind of had the wrong attitude going into it. So I'm hoping to see kind of change of pace against the Raptors because they're going to need it.
Yeah, I think, you talk about guard play. I think, it wasn't just D'Lo and Spencer Dinwiddie. It was like Karis LeVert. Joe Harris had a really poor playoff experience, but I feel like, I think that's the one thing we should look forward to in this Toronto game is like how are we going to play against their guards or like guard-like players, because there's a lot of players on Toronto's team that have really good ball handling skills, and we should look at that. But to talk about the Nets series, we looked like doo-doo in the first game. We looked okay in the second game. The third game we looked better, and then fourth game we got out of it. And the fifth game we looked like the team that we all thought we were on paper since the beginning, or ever since we got that starting lineup in the regular season. So. I'm just happy that we took care of things. Now we can move on and focus on something else instead of the Nets.
Yeah, Dave, you just gave a very accurate description of how that series went game by game. But a major player in the series who been a major player all year, pretty much a potential MVP all season, is Joel Embiid. He had such a big series, averaging 24.8 points per game. Almost 14 rebounds and 3 blocks per game versus the Nets, and he missed game 3 with a sore knee. And, he's coming back in game 4 off that injury. It's more of a condition than an injury if he keeps missing games periodically. But What do we make of his contributions in this series?
You guys can.
Well, I mean, you saw it right there. He put up 24 points per game. I mean, it pretty much was 30 if you think about it. Everyone just played poorly in the first game, which messed up everyone's stats if you're really a stat person.
Except
but
for Jimmy.
Yeah, but I mean, if you really think about it, Joel Embiid is. We always said it the whole year. He's the heart and soul of this team. In Game 3, I didn't no one knew what to think of Game 3. We all thought we were going to get smacked again. It would be 2-1 on the Nets side, but Ben Simmons came up big for that game and became a true big man. Not that he wanted to be, but he just played that Magic Johnson position that he played back in the day when Kareem went down. You just had to put a center in there and something to dominate. So that's what he did. So I mean, you think about it. Technically, we do have on all the time we do have 3 centers on the court. Technically, if you really think about it, but Embiid is the guy that we're always going to go to no matter what. He's going to be the guy that is going to take care of things when the time comes.
Yeah, I definitely think Joel is the leading presence on this team, and it was worrisome when he was going to be out in Game 3. That knee soreness has been bothering him for months, and it's something that we've seen time and time again. He will miss a couple of games, and then he'll come back and he'll play a little bit, and then he'll miss more games. So it was kind of there was a lot of uncertainty, but I think not as much to his credit, but to the team as a whole, and like you said, to Ben Simmons for stepping up without him there and really taking over Game 3 and controlling that. Kudos to them, because obviously they were missing their guy. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that on the court we all love Embiid, and that's just a given, But off the court, we were a little confused because coming into the series, we weren't sure if he was going to play Game 1. He was out. He obviously missed Game 3. And then, during this series, not really speculations, but reports came out about how Embiid was taking care of his body and how he would just stuff his body with junk food, on plane rides to road games and stuff like that. So, I mean, I hope that those habits are out of the way. Again, his health, him being a 7'2" center with knee problems, that's always going to be concerning. That's got to linger in the back of your mind.
You talk about health. I saw a tweet that said Zaire Smith. You saw it was like a check of when he went to Chick-fil-A to get his order. It was 50 chicken sandwiches and 12 bags of fries. It was a lot of greasy stuff. So I mean, if we go talk about the health side of Joel Embiid, that man doesn't take care. You see him sometimes in the pregame eating grapes, but we all know he has a milkshake in the back, just waiting for him at the end of the game.
Yeah, and until he starts taking care of his body better, that knee is always going to linger. But 2 other players on this team that have been playing very well, Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. Jimmy Butler was the only bright spot in that first game, and Tobias Harris, it seemed like he wasn't even on the court in those first 2 games, but he really turned it around and stepped it up. So what will they need to do in this second series to advance against a Toronto team that did they get swept by Toronto in the regular season?
Yeah, I'll say I don't think they won a single game.
They won
the last game.
But
the last game
they didn't have Kawhi in that series.
Yeah, I remember
The thing about this Toronto series is that we didn't play this Toronto team with the team that we have now. Yeah. So that means Jimmy, Tobias, Boban, Mike Scott. Hopefully he's healthy.
Yeah.
They haven't played Toronto yet. We haven't played this team at full strength. So. I think it's going to be a more competitive series than people are giving us credit for. We're 5.5-point underdogs coming into this first game. So I mean, but it's going to be a tough series. There's a lot of athletic guards and forwards on this Toronto team. They're one of the best defensive lineups in the league, probably the best, especially having Pascal Siakam and Serge Ibaka. And now Marc Gasol, which just elevates their.
That's a tough day for Joel Embiid in the paint, and it's gonna be really hard for him. He's not gonna get a break. I mean, Boban's gonna come in and try to get some minutes off, but he's gonna get beat up too by all 3 of those big guys. So I mean, it's tough. But I mean, if you talk about these 2 guys, Butler and Tobias, I mean, you see that we need these guys on the court. Tobias was really off in the first game, but he picked it up like Sam said. And Butler, I mean, even though he had 36 in the first game and he didn't have that much in the following games, he still was the defensive presence. He averaged 3 steals. So I mean, you realize how important these side characters are to Embiid's play and how Ben Simmons can actually force something in there if he has to.
I mean, we witnessed. When Jimmy Butler got ejected, is that Game 4?
Yeah. Was it Game 4?
Game 4?
Yeah, it was. That's why it was so
second
close.
Half of Game 4. Kind of the difference there without him. Obviously, they came and they pulled out a win, but you could definitely see a change of pace on the court without Jimmy Butler there.
Yeah, well, this Toronto series, it's obviously going to be tough. It's not going to be skating past the Brooklyn Nets again. And even after they clear this hurdle, they still have a whole, a complete other series after that, in which they could be facing, a Boston team, which had been beating them in every game this season and the season before that, except for their most recent game. And obviously, it was Boston who knocked the Sixers out of the playoffs last year. But it's just one of those things. It's one game, one series at a time, and you have to just hope that everyone will step it up. So that just about concludes Sixers talk. One of our panelists on desk here, Selena Bemek, is her last show. So we're going to go into some of her favorite moments over the past 4 years in her time that she's been at LaSalle, and she's just going to talk about her favorite moments. So Selena, the floor is yours.
All right. So moment number 1. Eagles Super Bowl win, Super Bowl 52. This is everybody's favorite moment, right? Yeah, you can't really beat that one. So, and if you do disagree with that, you're wrong. Yeah, you're not a real Eagles fan. And it's not just the Super Bowl. The whole season from game 1 was so much fun. Winning every single week, almost every single week. We'll forget about the Chiefs game and the end of the season, the Dallas game and week 17. But winning almost every single week with Carson Wentz, it was so electric. It was so much fun. I mean, I've never had such a great experience as an Eagles fan, and I'm sure nobody else has either. So it was just a great time. And then just in the playoffs, Nick Foles taking us all the way when nobody believed in him, and then the underdog, everything just felt perfect and fell into place. So the Super Bowl has to be number 1 all time. And then the parade, of course. One of my friends made eye contact with Nate Sudfeld. So the parade was amazing. So moment number 2, the Phillies signing Bryce Harper. This is like the worst, best moment. Because it took so long and there was so much anticipation. And I don't really like Bryce Harper that much, but you got to give him credit. And then my last moment, more recently, Joel Embiid calls Jared Dudley a nobody. This is mostly a combination of Joel Embiid moments in general, just because I love JoJo. He's the funniest person, even though we worry about him when he's over in the off season playing with Lions and doing all types of crazy stuff. But just the fact that he was like, first of all, this guy's a nobody, just shows his personality and makes him such a character that we love to love here in Philadelphia, and it makes him one of us. So those are my top 3 moments. Yeah, and Dave also senior co-signs that. So Eagles Super Bowl win, Phillies signing Bryce Harper, and Joel Embiid in general.
Yeah, well, thank you, Selena, for your thoughts on some really big sports moments in Philly, especially that Super Bowl win. But that just about wraps up Sports Talk Philly for today. You can catch us on social media at STP Philly, or Sports Talk LTV. You can catch us on Facebook, on our YouTube channel. Send us an email, reach out to us, do whatever you got to do. I just want to thank my panelists, Josh, Selena, and Dave, and Tyler Small for appearing today, and for all of us at Sports Talk Philly. Have a great weekend.